Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker, established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys and offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. And by J.P. Morgan Chase, a partner in financial planning. Looking ahead to retirement, growing your business, or for commercial banking, J.P. Morgan Chase offers advice and solutions tailored to individual needs and client well-being. More information is at jpmorganchase.com. And by Luba Workers' Comp, a regional insurance carrier dedicated to providing reliable workers' compensation coverage to employers and workers in 13 states across the Southeast. With personalized service, trusted expertise, and tailored solutions, Luba helps businesses protect what matters most. Discover more at lubawc.com.
From Collins on St. Charles Avenue in Uptown New Orleans, we're Out to Lunch with Peter Raschuti, Tulane University A.B. Freeman School of Business professor and director of the Birkenroad Reports. It's business, New Orleans style.
Hi, I'm Peter Raschuti. Welcome to Out to Lunch. In most cities in the U.S., after you've blown it out on New Year's Eve, if you want another socially approved excuse to party, you have to wait a bit. Memorial Day is 5 months away, and at best you might be able to get away with spring break, and that's 4 months. Here in New Orleans, you have less than a week till the next round of society-sanctioned excessive eating, drinking, and socializing begins. January 6th is 12th night, the official beginning of Mardi Gras. That's when the first parades begin and traditionally when bakers start selling king cake. Since 2019, it's also the opening day of a king cake lover's paradise, King Cake Hub. King Cake Hub is Jennifer Samuel's 2-month-a-year business. It's a single location where you can get practically every variety of king cake available in New Orleans. Currently, there are 80 of them. They're baked by 25 different bakers, and the King Cake Hub collection is curated, meaning Jennifer tastes and approves each king cake. Jennifer Samuels, welcomed Out to Lunch.
Thank you.
New Orleans, a city on the banks of the Mississippi River, takes its name from Orléans, a city on the banks of the Loire River in France. We can argue who's New Orleans' most famous citizen. It's probably Louis Armstrong, but undoubtedly, Orleans' most famous citizen is the Maid of Orleans. Her name was Jeanne d'Arc, and she became better known to the English-speaking world as Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc's birthday is January 6th, which is also, as I mentioned, 12th night, the first night of Mardi Gras. It was that fact and the feeling that 12th night wasn't being celebrated with enough inclusive diversity in New Orleans that led Amy Kirk Duvesson to found the Joan of Arc Project. The flagship activity of the Joan of Arc Project is the Joan of Arc Parade on 12th night. It's a walking parade set in Joan's era, the 1400s, with medieval costumes, music, characters on horseback, and roving entertainers like jugglers and stilt walkers. The paraders have medieval throws and king cake. Amy Kirk Duvesson, welcomed Out to Lunch.
Thank you. Bonjour.
Jennifer, King Cake Hub is one of those ideas that sounds simple. Get a bunch of king cakes and sell them until you start thinking about it. The more you start thinking about it, the more you realize there are a lot of moving parts and layers of complexity. So let's start with the beginning of the day at King Cake Hub. How do king cakes get to you? Do you have a truck that picks them all up, or are you relying on 25 different bakers to show up every morning with the right number of fresh cakes?
When we started, we had one van that would go around and pick up, but at this point, that is not a possibility. Between 7:30 and 8:30, we have everybody's bringing in their cakes to the hub, cakes from all over the area. It's a really frantic time with everybody trying to load their shelves and get organized and get ready to start.
What about, do the bakers have a pretty good idea of how many to bring, or do you help them on that side?
I tell them. I order everything.
Help is different than tell. Tell us how to yes.
Well, I order everything. I have a pretty good idea what's going to go. And there are some bakers, if I left it up, I would be a whole store of just that cake. And then there are some that can't keep up with that, and we'll get 20 to 30 of those.
In my king cake purchasing experience, prices can vary significantly. How does price figure into people's buying decision? Is there a price point resistance, or do people pretty much willing to pay anything for the king cake they want?
Depends on the time. Some seasons I do see a little bit more of a cost-conscious customer. Other years, it doesn't matter. They've got to get their cake.
This could be a great economic signal. You know, people's willingness to take the more expensive cake.
I never thought of that.
Yo, no.
That's actually
I think you have solved a big market problem. This is great.
the
Amy,
market report by Jennifer, the King Cake Hub.
King Cake
like
Market
that.
Report.
Amy, people sometimes describe Mardi Gras as the best free show on earth, but it's not free to those people producing parades. I believe when you started Joan of Arc Parade in 2008, you got a grant from the Arts Council of New Orleans. I'm interested to learn how you pulled that off. What's the process of getting a cash grant to start up a Mardi Gras parade?
Well, if you notice, the name of the organization is Joan of Arc Project, so I definitely started it with more than just the parade in mind. In fact, it's laughable to people now that the parade was just supposed to be part of this 3-day conference that I held with money from the Arts Council. We had arts workshops, music workshops, some costume making workshops, and then the grand finale was going to be the parade. Well, that has turned on its head, and now the parade is the thing that everyone knows us for, which is great, but we do a lot of other things year round. And the Arts Council was also very helpful in helping me shape the proposal to make it clear that we were returning, unbeknownst to me, it wasn't really until I talked to them as the experts, but we were returning to the walking traditions in the French Quarter. So tying it into the cultural heritage of New Orleans and French culture, and also to the French Quarter itself, and returning to these earlier walking crews also was what gave them inspiration to give us money, especially post-Katrina. It was still kind of the post-Katrina era, which seemed to last almost a decade. So it was 3 years after that. And so they felt like it was important to support some new energy and things going on in the quarter.
And I can see why they have tied that to the cultural history of the city and all that is. For most New Orleans crews, their parade is their most visible activity, but they do all sorts of other stuff. They have royal courts and balls and all kinds of social gatherings and community involvement during the year. Does the crew of Joan of Arc have these kind of year-round activities?
We do, but we're a little bit nerdier and more peasant-like, I would say, than most Mardi Gras crews. We call ourselves an army of artists, and so a lot of what we do is arts or literary based. We have an annual conference called the Salon de Jeanne d'Arc, which is, again, one of the few times you'll hear me speak French. I don't speak French. None of our leaders do. We have a lot of groups who, a lot of French support. I was knighted by the French government for my work with French culture, and I'm in the midst of taking French lessons. But anyway, the Salon de Jeanne d'Arc, just because it rhymes, is the title, is an all-day conference about Joan of Arc that we hold at Tulane every year. And we learn about everything from new books written about her to sword fighting was a workshop that we've had. We do all sorts of things that are tied either very directly to Joan or tied to our own parade. For example, we now have an exchange with Orléans, our sister city, where we send, thanks to the Rotary clubs on each side of the pond, we send our Joan and they send their Joan to us. So that our local Joan of Arc presents at the Salon every year about what her experience was like in Orléans, our sister city. So that's something that we do there as well. We also hold throw workshops. We pride ourselves on hand making most of our throws. You can see some of them are printed, but they're still locally designed, or the Joan of Art contest, which is 5 years old. We hold a contest every year where local art is generated about Joan, and we use that in our throws as well. So those are just a few of the things that we do year round.
This show has become an ad for Duolingo.
Yes!
Which is fine, really.
Which was the first thing my French teacher told me to use. I thought, why do I need you? I'll just go online, yes.
Jennifer, what do you do for the other 10 months?
Well, the planning starts in the fall. Usually my daughter goes back to school, and then that's when I kind of go back to work. And then after Carnival, there's a couple of months of cleanup.
Now, are you one of those people that thinks if you got a king cake outside of Carnival season, it's blasphemous?
You know, you can't be keep a hard line on that anymore. The bakeries, to do the volume that they do on January 6th, they've got to start training their staff, and they've got to start early.
And that's another thing I would think would be difficult. It's always tough getting labor, but they know they're only going to be working for a couple of months.
I am very fortunate that my staff, they have fun. They enjoy what they're doing, and we get fairly generous tips. They come back most years. I have a surprise number of people that return for a seasonal position.
Amy, when you started this, I'm sure a lot of people said, wait a minute, aren't there enough parades, for instance? And even though yours is so different, how did you answer that?
Nobody said there were too many parades. If you can believe it, they said there were too many festivals. I wanted it to be a festival to start off with, is going back to the Arts Council and the idea for this project. I love Joan of Arc, and I love films about Joan of Arc, books about Joan of Arc, theater, opera, everything about Joan of Arc. Every art form has celebrated Joan of Arc from her time all the way through to now. So there's endless opportunity to just have a festival with French food. I mean, I could picture the whole thing. I was going to have it on Britannia Street and then have a Joan of Arc film festival, like their French film festival. And I had that all in my head, and it was actually my dear friend Mary Beth Romig who said, and she loves this, to throw this back on her, we have too many festivals in this town. So I sat back, and a couple years went by, quite frankly, and I was reading a book about Joan, and I saw that she was born on 12th night, and that's when the parade idea came about. It made perfect sense with the start of Mardi Gras to have a parade on that first night and celebrate her birthday. Catholics like to celebrate feast days, which is really a nice word for when they were killed or died. So we did not want to celebrate that. Being able to celebrate a happy time, birthday, on what happens to be one of our happiest times, and the last day of Christmas season, it just made perfect sense. So there wasn't a lot of pushback about the idea of a parade, especially a walking parade. I think if I had gone and said, hey, I want to start this, big float parade down St. Charles, they'd be like, there's no time, there's no room, forget it. But I was kind of filling a gap, and I was certainly not competing with anyone. It's the week after Sugar Bowl, and so because of the time and the place of the quarter, it was welcomed.
Jennifer, I don't even know what to call your business platform. What I want to say is pop-up, like you would be the most successful pop-up in the history of New Orleans, but that's not the way you think of it, right?
Well, it is a pop-up in that it's a seasonal business, but I think of it more in terms of spirit store, the Halloween.
I thought you meant spirit store, like liquor store.
Oh,
no, there's
different one.
I was thinking that's what you do for 10 months. There's I was worried about you. Now, this is when I think about how did you come up with it? Did you see people having to go to a lot of different grocery stores or bakeries to find what they were looking for?
So the reality is, my daughter and I have been obsessed with king cake forever. I used to make it back when she was a baby, and in addition to making king cake, we would go around and grab king cakes from as many different bakeries as we could. And we'd make these lists, and I would usually place orders, and Will had a more flexible schedule. So he was oftentimes the one to get sent across town or to the next parish to get the cakes. And one day, I guess he'd been stuck in traffic and was just a little bit annoyed. And he's like, what if there was one place you could get them all? And I'm like, well, I'd shop there. And it was a little bit, at the time, it was kind of like he was aggravated about, waiting in the traffic. And my response was like, well, yes, that would have been a simple solution. It doesn't exist. So it just kind of marinated for a while. And it kept coming back up. And one day he decided to go for it.
So Will was your other baker and husband?
Will didn't bake, but he was the entrepreneur.
You're listening to Out to Lunch. I'm Peter Raschuti. I'm talking with Jennifer Samuels from King Cake Hub and Amy Kirk-Duvisan from the Joan of Arc Parade. We'll continue our conversation when we come right back from this short break.
Out to Lunch is brought to you by Basics Underneath. Fine lingerie, personalized fitting, curated swimsuits and workout wear. Uptown on Magazine Street and at basicsunderneath.com. And by Tracy Moore, broker, realtor, and partner at Rev Realtors, offering over 20 years of experience representing buyers, sellers, and investors. Learn more at tracy.revrealtors.com. Additional support comes from Nola Massage, a professional bodywork studio on Magazine Street, Uptown, offering a full range of bodywork, including therapeutic and lymphatic massage, cupping, and infrared sauna. More information and online bookings are at nolamassagetherapy.com. And from Bougie Bologna Company, made in Cajun country from 100% naturally smoked pork shoulder, Bougie Bologna is premium deli meat to go. In the meat department at Rouse's Supermarkets or at bougiebologna.com. It's bougie, baby.
You're listening to Out to Lunch. I'm Peter Raschuti. I'm talking with Jennifer Samuels from King Cake Hub and Amy Kirk-Duvesson from the Joan of Arc Parade. Amy, the only thing they had on 12th night was the 40 Funny Fellows, the group that's in the streetcar that come. Did they object to having some competition, or?
I'm so glad you asked. I mentioned feast day being not the happiest of times for those of us practicing or non-practicing Catholics, even though it's called the feast day you're supposed to celebrate. I went to Errol Laborde to kind of bow down and say, hey, so I know you all have this thing on 12th night, and I'm thinking of starting this. I hadn't yet done it. And he said, why don't... I'm sure he said other things. All I remember him saying was, why not on her feast day? And I said, expletive to, probably a few other choice words, it's really hot in May, and we can't wear medieval clothing that we want. I kind of just tossed it off as like, it's just too hot. But also, I said the church handles that day, and there's a lot of festivals in May, and between wanting to be a very secular organization and wanting to do something when it's nice and chilly so we can wear all these awesome, monk's robes and things. We're not going to be wearing those in May. May 30th would be her feast day. So that was my argument to him. I've toyed with and joked with and suggested every couple years that we have our Joan on our horse ride up to the streetcar and toast them, just the way you have Zulu and Rex. So now that I've said it again more publicly, maybe we can have that happen. I think that'd be really cool. We've also moved our parade time so more people can come to see both. So there's some people who I think as time goes on will be able to figure out how to enjoy both.
Now, Jennifer, you're going to say something humble, but I'm going to ask you, you turned it into an event the first day of King Cake. I mean, I've seen like live media coverage, you've got a band. When did that happen?
It was just, the whole idea of King Cake Hub's a little silly. And it was just an idea to have some fun, to bring some attention, and to celebrate. King Cake's finally legal again.
Amy, the thing about what you're doing here is that you've kind of come up with something that, first of all, it's a walking parade, which I love, but the walking parades are lots of fun on Mardi Gras morning, but they're very small, and you've decided, you almost wonder, could you take that concept and make it larger? You've got, was it 600 riders or walkers?
About that, yep, around 600. Mm-hmm.
Why'd you think you could do it?
Well, I didn't. I mean, I think just as you can appreciate as an entrepreneur, you don't think that far ahead, right? You just start it. And so you start small and you hope that, it grows, or you don't even hope. You just want it to happen, So there were about 50 of us the first year, and that was fine. I mean, I think I imagined maybe it would get to 100, and then we could really tell some more details of her story. And it grew partly because of the way New Orleans parades grow is you have these groups, right? You have these dancing groups, and you have my friend from the Chorus Girls Project, another Amy, said, hey, we'd love to be in the parade. And I suggested angels to her, because of course you're not going to walk as 1920s dancing girls, right? So every dancing group that came to us, and walking group, whether it was the Muffalettas, the Amazons, and most recently Crew de Floors, we found a perfect place for them within Joan of Arc's narrative. So it's, if I would do a TED Talk about starting a parade, which I encourage everybody to do, you choose a story, you choose a person or a story or a topic, and the possibilities are endless. This is my theater background, right? Coming in. So we're always just reminding ourselves that we're a theatrical procession. And so when a group comes to us, or when we think of a missing piece, or we read another book in our book club, or we see another film, we're like, oh, that could be in the parade. And so that's really how it grows. It's just, I'm an archer, and I don't have any archers right now. It's just me walking around with a bow and arrow looking kind of like an idiot. So I need some archers, right? So that's my goal for the next parade, is to have some British archers to try to kill me. So, we're always just telling Joan's story, but it just naturally grows. And so eventually, I don't want to get too much bigger, but that's really how it has happened to grow. It would just be like if you worked on a play for 17 years and I guess you're supposed to be editing a play down, but this would be like a play, Shakespeare. Shakespeare just adding another character or another a plot twist,
Jennifer, I bet you've thought about this, and it just probably is overwhelming. But have you ever thought of doing King Cake Hub in some other traditional Mardi Gras towns like Lafayette or Mobile?
I have considered. The one thing about it, though, is it really does rely on me being there and talking to the customers and placing the orders. And there's just a lot of things that you have to have someone really involved and very knowledgeable about what demand is going to be to do. And I obviously don't have time to get away and go explore those areas
That's
during
what your daughter's
Carnival.
for. This is going to work out.
So, yeah, I would love to do it as a pop-up, to go to Baton Rouge or Lafayette, because I do hear requests for it. But to be able to organize it, to bring what they want, to bring the partners, I need to duplicate myself.
Talk about duplicating yourself. You're in kind of the same boat, Amy. You started this, and it's probably got a lot bigger than you ever thought it would. And you're basically, if I just looked up some research on your background, you're really a creative, and yet now you've got a lot of T's to cross and I's to dot. What do you do about that?
Yeah, when I started the parade, it was, again, in that hazy post-Katrina era that just seemed to last forever, and I was working in radio, and I had a lot of manic energy, I think as a lot of people did, so I would work from 3 a.m. to 9 a.m., and it felt like I had the whole day off, even though I hadn't slept. And, so I'd take a nap, and then I had the whole day off until I went to bed at maybe 7 p.m. So I had a lot of time on my hands then. I was not yet married and did not yet have a child. And so I always joke, like, what jerk decided to start a parade right after Christmas so that you have to waste your whole Christmas break on the parade preparation? That would be me. But that was before I had a kid, and I was kind of one of those adults who probably didn't love Christmas time, and I just didn't. I thought this is great for the winter blues, right? So, and I lived a lot of places where it didn't look like this at Christmas time. So I thought, this is genius. Now we have something to do in those dismal December days, and now I'm like, So yeah, after 10 years of doing that, after having a kid, and when she was around 8, I passed the baton on to 2 very capable women who had already been my strongest comrades and already carrying a lot of that weight behind the scenes. They just didn't have the title. So Amanda Helm, who I love that her last name's Helm, had already taken the helm in many ways with membership and other things. And then Antoinette de Alteris, a genius costume designer, she had already been managing all the costumes and then some. So they were already doing a lot of different pieces, especially as I continued to build the project around the parade. It's like, oh, gee, I'm glad the parade's going so well, but I have these other things I want to do. So they've taken the parade, and they're really responsible for taking it to the level of organization and beauty that it is. I literally was making things out of cardboard the first year. So everything you see is pretty much based on growing this army of artists and having 2 captains dedicated to that. And then I can work on all these other things year round. And I'm also heavily involved with the sister city relationship and growing that. So I'm still involved with the parade on many, many levels, but it's been nice to just go to the title of founder and then work on all these other things.
But Jennifer, you're kind of in the same boat in a way. And every entrepreneurism that we've had on the show it's sometimes tough to delegate.
In mine, it's particularly difficult because you're dealing with all seasonal people. The setup starts back in the fall, so they just haven't been a part of that whole picture. They don't know the ins and outs of everything. They just don't understand the whole piece, all the pieces. So it's hard to really hand things over when they haven't been involved the whole way along.
And we talk about these people that you hire for the 2-month situation. What about the bakers themselves? Do some not want to work with you, and why?
I have not had very many who don't want to work with King Cake Hub. At this point, it's sort of changed the way people buy king cakes. And I think people buy a lot more king cakes now as well. But before King Cake Hub, you would go to the bakery and you knew exactly what you were there for. Now people come in and they're shopping and they're browsing and they're waiting to be sold, and it's just a different buying dynamic.
If you don't know anything else about New Orleans, you know that we're the home of Mardi Gras, the biggest, rowdiest annual street party in the country. If you live in New Orleans, Mardi Gras is more than just a party. It's more than just a whole lot of parties. It's part of the fabric of the city, from our culture to the economy. And like other aspects of culture and economics, it's not static. It changes, evolves. These evolutions are mostly the result of innovations that come from the creative minds of New Orleanians, like Jennifer Samuels and Amy Kirk-Duvesson. Jennifer and Amy, thank you for all your contributions to our centuries-old traditions, and thank you both for taking the time to join me today on Out to Lunch.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Merci beaucoup.
My guests on Out to Lunch today have been Jennifer Samuels, owner and curator of the King Cake Hub, and Amy Kirk-Duvesson, founder of the Joan of Arc project. We edited the show to fit into the time slot here on WWNO. You can hear our unedited conversation and find out more about Jennifer's King Cakes and Amy's parade by listening to the Out to Lunch podcast. You can find and subscribe to the Out to Lunch podcast on your podcast app and on our website, itsneworleans.com. If you want to know what we all look like, you can find photos from this show on itsneworleans.com and on our Out to Lunch social media. These photos were taken today by Jill LaFleur. You can find more of Jill's photos at lafleurphoto.com. Out to Lunch is a production of INO Broadcasting for itsneworleans.com and WWNO 89.9 FM. The producer of our show is Grant Morris, our technical producer is Eric Merle, and our researcher is Amy Irvin. I'm Peter Raschuti. Thanks for joining me. I look forward to meeting you again next week around the lunch table for more business, New Orleans style, on Out to Lunch.
Out to Lunch was recorded live at Columns on St. Charles Avenue. Columns serves lunch and dinner 7 days a week, hosts weddings and private events, features evenings of live jazz and more. Reservations for dining and hotel rooms are at thecolumns.com. Columns is a member of New Orleans & Company. More information at neworleans.com. Major support for Out to Lunch is provided by the law firm of Jones Walker, established in 1937 with over 375 attorneys and offices throughout the U.S., providing a comprehensive range of services to a local, national, and international client base. JonesWalker.com. And by J.P. Morgan Chase, a partner in financial planning. Looking ahead to retirement, growing your business, or for commercial banking, J.P. Morgan Chase offers advice and solutions tailored to individual needs and client well-being. More information is at jpmorganchase.com. And by Luba Workers' Comp, a regional insurance carrier dedicated to providing reliable workers' compensation coverage to employers and workers in 13 states across the Southeast. With personalized service, trusted expertise, and tailored solutions, Luba helps businesses protect what matters most. Discover more at lubawc.com. Mitchell Foreman wrote and performs all the music on Out to Lunch. You can hear Mitchell's music anywhere great jazz is sold or streamed, and at mitchellforeman.com.